Welcome back to Movie Moshow. Today we are going to review the science fiction adventure film, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. If you like our content, don't forget to like and subscribe. We post multiple times daily. Spoilers ahead. The guide, Stephen Fry, the second smartest beings on the planet, make the decision to depart Earth before it is obliterated. Tragically, people mistake their attempts to alert them to the threat for clever ruses or entertaining gimmicks for tidbits. Their final attempt to communicate is a really complex attempt to perform a double backwards hula hoop while humming the Star-Spangled Banner, which is actually their way of saying, "So long, and thanks for all the fish." An ordinary man named Arthur Dent, Martin Freeman, who lives in the English countryside, gets out of bed one morning, dons a robe, and runs outside after hearing construction equipment around his house. To prevent his home from being destroyed to make room for a bypass, he falls down in front of a bulldozer. If the bulldozer were to run over Arthur, the foreman, Mark Longhurst, explains anxiously that there would be no obvious damage to the machine. Ford Prefect, Yassine Bey, Arthur's closest friend, shows up at that very moment with a cart full of alcohol. The moment his home is demolished, he takes Arthur from the ground and informs him that they must leave immediately. Ford is briefly perplexed when Arthur points knowingly to his home, but he quickly tells Arthur that they still have time to make a purchase. The construction worker accepts his bounty of beer and peanuts, and he gives Arthur the assurance that the distraction would buy them enough time. He reveals that he is not from Guildford, as he had previously said, and then takes Arthur to a nearby pub. He responds to Arthur's skepticism by telling the story of their first encounter, in which Arthur shoved Ford out of the way as he attempted to shake hands with an approaching car, an actual Ford Prefect, thinking that cars were the dominant form of life on the planet. He is, in fact, from another planet close to Betelgeuse. Arthur takes out his phone while they sip their beverages and looks back at a picture of him with a young woman from a costume party. He remembers the time he met Tricia McMillan, Zooey Deschanel, who was dressed as Darwin, while he was Sir Livingston, drunk and upset at the day's problematic beginning. Up until Tricia suggested that they travel to Madagascar together, they got along right away. Tricia was deflated when Arthur hesitated and said that he couldn't just up and quit his work after realizing that she was serious. A blonde-haired man in formal attire then interrupted them, claiming to be from another planet and asking Tricia if she'd want to see his spacecraft. Arthur was forced to question the man's sanity and whether he had simply lost a golden opportunity after Tricia went with him. Before warning that the world is about to end, Ford buys a round of drinks for everyone in the bar. Arthur sprints out the door as he recalls his home. Ford is asked if they should cover their heads and if the world really is ending by the bartender, Albie Woodington. Ford replies, "If you like," but he acknowledges that it won't help at all. When Arthur gets home, the building crew has already destroyed his home, and a dark shadow hangs over the scene. In his grief, he misses the massive, cube spaceship that the construction team is already fleeing, from which a stern voice can be heard via loudspeakers. The alien identifies himself as Jeltz, Richard Griffiths, of the Planning Council, and explains that Earth's population shouldn't be the least bit astonished as the plans have been on display at the local Galactic Planning Department for 50 years. He also says that Earth has been planned for destruction. The final customers of the tavern, including Sue Elliott, place a bag over their heads as the world panics, and he then issues the command to start the catastrophe. Ford catches up to Arthur and grabs a towel from the room that used to be his restroom. A Vagan constructor fleet has come to Earth to destroy it in order to make room for a hyperspace bypass, he explains to Arthur, who is suddenly startlingly aware of the skyscraper-like spacecraft above them, and that he is going to hitchhike them off the planet. Ford extends his thumb, which is connected to an odd ring that produces a beam of yellow light. When viewed from a distance, the Earth appears to be ringed by thousands of Vagan ships that suddenly destroy it in one swift, clean motion. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, arguably the most successful, well-read, and divisive book ever, is then properly introduced by our gentle narrator. The book is a wealth of wisdom that contains numerous nuggets of knowledge about the universe and reassures any first-time reader with the words "Don't Panic" written in big, welcoming letters on its cover. In one of the Vagan ship's restrooms, Ford and Arthur suddenly awaken. Ford hands the towel to Arthur and tells that it's one of the most essential and practical items a hitchhiker can have and that he should never lose it. He hands Arthur his copy of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which Ford wrote, and then uses his towel to break a pipe so he may use his hitchhiking ring to alert another ship. Arthur studies the Vagans in the meantime, discovering that they are horribly bureaucratic and structured beings rather than being malicious. The guide warns that on no account should you ever allow a Vagan to read poetry to you, as they wouldn't even lift a finger to save their own grandmothers from the ravenous bugbladder beast of trawl without orders signed in triplicate, sent in, sent back, queried, lost, found, subjected to public inquiry, lost again, and finally buried in soft peat for 3 months and recycled as firelighters. Ford implants a tiny, yellow, slug-like critter into Arthur's brain in order to get him ready for his future cosmic adventures. The creature is a Babel fish, the guide continues, which absorbs brainwave energy and excretes aware frequencies that enable the host to comprehend whatever language he hears. The Vogons notice Arthur and Ford and carry them deeper inside the ship for questioning before they can devise a plan of escape. In that location, Jeltz reads some of his own poetry to the group, which causes Ford to have convulsions while Arthur is left perplexed. Apparently, Vogon poetry is the third worst in the galaxy. Ford and Arthur are ordered to leave the ship after Arthur makes an attempt to compliment Jeltz by sharing what he thought of his poetry. They are launched into empty space, where they hover for a brief moment before another ship appears and snatches them up, strangely changing into various objects before returning to its former shape. Before returning to their regular selves, Ford and Arthur are horrified to see that they have been transformed into sofas inside. The ship's computer, voice, Thomas Lennon, informs Tricia at the command center that it has picked up 2 hitchhikers. She breaks the news to Zaphod Beeblebrox, Sam Rockwell, the blonde driver who had picked her up at the costume party, and informs him that once the spacecraft used the improbability drive to exit hyperspace, they began picking up hitchhikers in the same direction she had come from. She then commands Marvin, Warwick Davis, voice of Alan Rickman, the ship's perpetually depressed android, to take the hitchhikers from the reception bay to the command center. Marvin's state is caused by a prototype personality program. As he reluctantly guides the visitors through the hallways, Tricia notices Arthur and bolts to change into something more formal. The first to greet them is Zaphod, who identifies Ford as his semi-half-brother because they have 3 mothers. Zaphod then announces that Ford is the new leader of the galaxy and the captain of the prestigious Heart of Gold. But it turns out that the oddball Zaphod abducted himself during his inauguration and took the Heart of Gold right after it was christened. A second head emerges from beneath Zaphod's main one, yelling insults, and then slaps Arthur across the face with a third arm lodged in Zaphod's chest. "You can't be president with a whole brain," Zaphod informs Ford while controlling his extra limbs. To Zaphod's jealousy, Tricia emerges and cheerfully welcomes Arthur, offering to show him around the ship. Zaphod, who is now aware of what happened to Earth and doesn't want Tricia to be unhappy, pulls Arthur aside and threatens to disembowel him if he tells her what happened to their planet. While Zaphod and Ford enjoy a drink together, Tricia, who has since changed her name to Trillian to sound more cosmological, exposes Arthur to the wonders of the spacecraft. She knocks over her purse while obtaining aspirin for Arthur, who can't seem to grasp that he's in space and that it's a good thing, and 2 white mice pop out and run off. Then Zaphod summons everyone to the viewing area and starts playing a video. It reveals that 2 pan-dimensional entities named Fook and Lunquill, Dominique Jackson and Jack Stanley, built Deep Thought, voice, Helen Mirren, millions of years ago on the planet Magrathea in order to find the ultimate solution to the issue of life, the universe, and everything. Deep Thought informs Fook and Lunquill that they must return in 7.5 million years in order to receive the solution. In the follow-up clip, which Zaphod plays, Fook and Lunquill approach Deep Thought on the red carpet in front of a sizable crowd precisely 7.5 million years after the first clip. 42 is the answer to the ultimate query, according to Deep Thought. Thank you for watching and don't forget to like and subscribe.